Jean, can you explain the soul trap and how it kept humanity captive and when it was destroyed?
So you have to realize there's soul traps within soul traps. The Milky Way, which happened 650 billion years ago, give or take a few tens of thousands or millions of years, is a soul trap. All fallen galaxies are. Their central sun is not visible, it's in a black hole. In other words, a soul trap. It itself, a living being, is caught permanently inside the soul trap. Thus, the entire galaxy is trapped in the energy of it, is trapped in the soul trap. So, all the individual sentient beings, when they die in that galaxy, if they get out of the soul trap of their solar system, or one on their planet, or a localized one on their neighborhood or their country or their continent, even if they leave the planet, they're going to be inside the Milky Way soul trap. And so that's the first one. That's why when I died, God coded me such that every time I die, I immediately look down, force myself to be looking down on the Milky Way. It's automatic trip code where I'm looking down on the Milky Way. I'm outside the soul trap. And so in that, the Earth's soul trap was first created, the first layer of it was created by Thoth, which is one of the Atlantean kings long before, and he's a chimeric being. If you look at what Thoth looks like in ancient Egypt, he's not just human. He has some animal characteristic. He's a genetically modified being. And so that being an ancient king of Egypt, or Pharaoh, was actually, if we look at the lineages, the Sumerian king scrolls, or in the Temple of Seti, the pharaohs, and you look at both walls, not just one, because they only take one wall for the accepted dynasties. There's a whole nother wall of dynasties going all the way back to Osiris. And some of these pharaohs are ruling for 150,000 years and more. Well, the same thing with Sumeria. You've got kings ruling for 36,000 years. You add them up, you're getting over 200,000 years of rule of Sumeria. But Sumeria wasn't there that long. So what are we saying? Well, we're saying the Sumerian tablets that Atlantis was a worldwide civilization, a dominant civilization that ruled the world for a time. And sometimes the capital was Atlantis, and then when that was destroyed, it went to Sumeria. That was the capital. That's all. It's not the Sumerian Empire, it's the Atlantean Empire. And they're not understanding that that king is ruling what's left, because they destroyed a chunk of it, of this Atlantean Empire. Even though they're now calling it Sumeria in the tablet, it's still actually Atlantis. And so you're going back into the time of Atlantis. And so in that, if you're looking at how all of this ancient antiquity, as we're going back and going back and going back, you have to understand where all of this ancient knowledge comes from and how it all ties together and where it goes to and where it comes from. And so as you're looking at that balance and that understanding of the time frames and all of this, now you start to be able to put the picture together. So that's the first part of that. Restate your question so I can go into the second part of that.
Can you explain the soul trap and how it kept humanity captive and when it was destroyed?
Yeah. So when Atlantis fell, they decided that they couldn't enslave the world so easily. So now we have Sumeria, Atlantean kings ruling from Sumeria. They said, how do we enslave the world still? So Thoth said, I'll put an energy structure around the earth and ensnare all the souls on earth so they can't leave. And it'll also mix certain ways of thinking where they'll be the only ones that are allowed. So if you get too joyous or too happy or too compassionate, it'll make you fearful, it'll make you afraid, it'll make you feel uneasy, you'll get a panic attack, and we can feed off that too. We can harness that energy too. So that was the soft sphere. Then the Adamites, the pre-Adamites, built a space station as Tiamat broke up, called the Moon. And they brought it over here and drug it into place to the Anunnaki running Sumeria, the kings of Sumeria. They came down and started running the place and took it over. And so, and built Gobekli Tepe, and were ruling from Gobekli Tepe for quite a long time. That's why it was buried when they kicked the Anunnaki off the planet. Humanity beat them out. And so during that time, before that happened, they connected as they used the drive system get here, and when they shut it and put in low power mode to grid lock it and to gravity lock it in tidal lock to the earth so they could build stuff on the backside so you'd never see it. And it would orbit at a certain distance so that it would perfectly eclipse the sun and all kinds of certain things that would set certain energy structures and timing and into place like a gearing system. They turned the power system in the center for the gravity lock. Part of it was shut down. So they brought it online and connected it to the thosphere. And then during that cataclysm of Tiamat breaking up, Satan plummeted into Jupiter, or excuse me, into Saturn, and ejected a lot of material, and they put ships into that material and marshaled them into rings to make an antenna system. This is all part of a big plan by the cabal. So that antenna system, combined with the thosphere, combined with the moon room to capture souls, send them into the moon room, transmit them towards Saturn. The rings of Saturn would pick them up, send the soul into the southern polar storm to go into holographic cities that were created within the Saturn, like Jabalon and other things. So they would think they've gone to heaven. They would be met by hologramic beings, if they're Islamic or, or Jewish, Hebrew, or whatever, depending on their, ethnic and religious persuasion. They'd be met by Christ or Muhammad or, whatever they believed. Or if they didn't believe, they're agnostic. They'd be met by family and friends and say, oh, you're not done. You got to go through some training and some schooling, and you go back to Earth because you're so important. You're going to reincarnate, and then you go through the North Polar Storm. And they created a hexagonal system that would wipe the memory of the soul. And it doesn't actually wipe it, because the soul memory, it wipes the soul memory out, but the soul is empowered by the part of the Holy Spirit you are, and they can't touch that. And so the memories are completely forever, eternally embedded in the Holy Spirit that resonates like your own little Akashic records, going back to that question. And so that is the memories of all of your incarnations for all of creations you've ever been in. And so even when you go past this creation, your soul's undone, next creation, you get a new soul. You're that eternal part of the eternal Holy Spirit you are, the memories are still there. So you get a new soul, you start getting new memories, but you have memories from the past creations you were in. And so they can't touch that. So the soul trap can only erase the soul memory or confuse it and lock it up so you can't sense it anymore. And a lot of people that are very advanced, it can do that. And so then they can't actually erase it. They just kind of make it so you can't touch it anymore. And then they send you towards 3 moons they created that have hexagonal satellite dishes to capture the soul and transmit it to the moon room, the incoming portion of the moon room, the amplifier system to capture it there, and then send it down to a baby that's getting ready to be born. And then the person's reincarnated, and they don't realize they've been here before, they've done this before, they don't realize anything about themselves. So, in an ascension path, you can't, because if you're in an ascension path, to be able to remember who you were, what you did, what you learned previously, and the mistakes you've made, and you've learned from those, well, now you don't. So you're like in a graduate school system, and you're forever a kindergartner because you can't remember kindergarten, preschool, first grade, second grade, college, anything. And you don't even know you have term papers due and final exams and doctoral papers due and all of this stuff. You're forever locked in at relearning the same thing over and over and over and over and over and over again. And so That's why they created the soul trap, to permanently and forever enslave humanity. And now that the Alliance has shut down the moon room, the rings are still there for Saturn. The moon room's still there, it's just shut down. The thoughtsphere is still up. So people die, they get caught in the thougsphere, but a lot of advanced beings are punching holes through it. So it looks like Swiss cheese now. There's tons of holes. So when you leave the Earth, if you avoid Saturn, you would go into the Milky Way soul trap. So that doesn't have as powerful a draw as our system soul trap. So then you would be able to go, if you're immediately aware, you could focus just on the Christ invocation and demand to go to the throne of God. Do the Christ invocation and say, in the power of the one and only God of all creation, bring me to the throne of God, or bring me to the seat of God. And you would instantly be there. It's very, very simple now, because there's so many holes in the thoughtsphere. And so what the Alliance is doing is continuing the upper beings to punch holes in that. What the Cabal is doing is trying to fill the holes and recover the thoughtsphere in its entirety and create a soul trap so powerful that they get people into 15-minute cities that are soul traps in themselves. So you're in a 15-minute location, so they don't have to worry about the thoughtsphere because it has so many holes. They'll put a satellite system around the whole Earth, and it's not Starlink, but a nanotech system that would then corral people into the frequency of each individualized 15-minute city area. So when you die, you come back to that 15-minute city area. So you would reincarnate forever in one small 15-minute area of Chicago, for example. That would be the sum total of your existence from now till the end of time. That's what they want to do. That's where they're trying to head. That's why we have to have absolute freedom. We need to come together and envision and pray for that in absoluteness. So that's an understanding of where they're wanting to take the soul traps and where the soul traps are.
Beautiful. That is like the most thorough understanding. I think I might understand part of it now. Thank you.